I'd like to welcome everyone to the Water and Sewer Commissioners meeting on Tuesday, October 26th. Before we get into the meeting, I'd like to ask everyone to please rise. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you. Welcome, everybody. We'll kick things right off the bat with superintendent's updates, please, Frank.
I only got 3 pages here.
Nice.
All right, so we'll start off. While I was away on vacation, thank you, John, for taking over. When I came back, I heard there was actually a few complaints for water quality issues in an area that we hadn't had for quite some time. Come to find out, one of our techs who's on vacation now responded to the complaint calls that were down there and actually found a fire suppression company performing unauthorized sprinkler flow tests at this facility. The tech that responded, one of our senior techs, actually obviously shut them down, explained the problems with their actions, explained our rules and regulations and the procedures that they must follow. The tech actually informed our guy that he had asked specifically the management property if he had the all clear, if he had to do anything else, notify anybody else, and they basically told him he had the green light for the go ahead to do whatever he needed to do. This is actually, it's known as Great Brook, but it's Godfrey Drive. It's across from the Roach Brothers Plaza, set back a little bit off of Smith Street. So multiple locations, had the sprinkler lines dumped and flushed.
So, moving forward with this, and I'm so sorry to break into you, but moving forward with this, is there any way we can draft up some sort of letter, either from the board, to every single customer that we know that has these suppression systems, that they are required to, so we don't have any more of these quality issues?
It has already been done.
It was done a year ago.
Really?
Yep. We will be sending out reminder letters, as now we're cycling through most of the companies and businesses that we've dealt with. Now it's coming up into the fourth quarter. Actually later on I'm going to explain, I got a couple more tests here that are scheduled. We know there's a few still out there that haven't notified us of the testing or coordinated with us. Each building is different based on insurance regulations and fire requirements. Some test every quarter, some test once a year, and some are actually even more than that. The larger
And honestly,
facilities.
and that's fine. They can test 100 times a year.
Right,
I mean,
but we need to know.
We need to know.
Yeah.
And I think we keep on spending, our budget on flushing and people getting aggravated, and I don't blame them.
Right. Yep.
It's frustrating for us. So we should put some sort of fine in there, and that they. Maybe we got to start fining people.
Yeah. The previous board actually did implement a fine. There was no particular fine in place back then that was specific to these events. We had the tampering of a fire hydrant fine that was in there, and obviously stealing water, all that.
I remember that.
So there is wording in, actually the exact regulation is section 5-12.1. It's higher hydrant, put that word together. Hydrant flow and fire sprinkler pump tests must be scheduled through the Water Department office. Failure to do so will result in fines and possible service termination. The first offense is $1,000 plus water usage and any personnel expenses for cleaning up such event. Second and subsequent offenses will be $1,500 plus usage and personnel expenses.
Good.
We have fined one other company since I've been here. For a similar situation. They come in, they flowed multiple 2-inch drains at one of our larger complexes. Unfortunately, that event was a little bit more significant than this one, even though this did cause a disturbance. The first event that prompted the letter and all of this to start was actually while we were doing flushing of the system. So we had valves isolated, so we created a low pressure system, generated a ton of calls. We thought the worst, obviously, and once we had enough time to slow down what we were doing, cleaning up that area that was affected, and then started backtracking, working our way out of the affected area. We stumbled across it. The fire people were already gone by then. But, you know, again, one of our techs had noticed that, you know, the 2-inch drains coming out of the side of the building, you know, all the moisture was blown away, you know, so it was obvious there was flow.
Yeah.
You know, we contacted the management company, and they indicated to us, oh yes, they were here, it was so-and-so, they performed, you know, 8 tests that day. Are you kidding me?
Yep, I remember that.
Yep, so here we are, you know, again, knowing that there are probably a handful of people out there that didn't get notices because of the corporations that they work under. You know, if we send it to where the billing address goes, you know, doesn't mean it's gonna trickle down through all the management down to whoever the on-staff maintenance person is.
So if it's a company that's leasing a building and we send it to the owner of the building,
Exactly,
they never even
right.
see it.
But-
Obviously, it's not an excuse, you know.
Yep.
Not trying to give anybody a way out, you know, but I think what we're gonna do, you know, providing we have the staff available to, we have copies of flow tests that were performed, we know where our frequent testing is that we do, and we know where there's some that are deficient, like this property here. Now that we know, you know, they are on a schedule for some type of flushing of the devices, you know, obviously we can watch them more closely, we can
So
reach
for
out.
those people, oh, it's February, so-and-so's gonna,
Typically,
I was gonna ask that,
yep.
we have a database of some kind with everybody,
Right, yep,
so we get a heads up on our own.
right.
We also have a hydraulic model that we work from too, right?
Yes, yep. So, again, there are some difficulties with this, you know, we control, or we want to control when all of these events happen, because obviously water quality is number one, but we have to make sure that we're taking accurate samples, not, you know, if there's a flow test going on 2 streets over, you know, it's gonna
Right.
give us a false reading, it's gonna give us an indication of something that could be far worse than what's actually in the system.
Right.
And then, you know, God forbid, there's another test already scheduled that day that people have actually paid for, done everything the right way, and now their readings are off. You know, it poses a problem for us, it poses a problem for them and their insurance company. So this could snowball, which is why we wanna have control over it. And, you know, until, unfortunately, this event, we felt we were doing pretty good. So there are still some deficiencies and some bugs that need to be worked out, and try and get down to the lower levels of the general management that are handling this. So I think what we may do, and I know John and I had spoken about this in depth, obviously, another letter is gonna be going out, reminding them, copy of the rules and regulations will be attached to it. And we may actually see if we can go to the local locations and see if we can hand it to anybody who's on site, which we don't have very good luck with. We've reached out to a couple different locations that most of these are the you know, elderly housing or 55 and over, not even elderly, or you know, like 174 East Main, you know, it's a multi-use housing.
Yep.
There's nobody on staff, on site. You know, there's a number you can call, so if we can at least generate some type of, you know, conversation back and forth with somebody, get some type of contact or something, that's the next step that we have to take, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Okay.
You know, we're not in the business, we don't wanna have to find people, we will if we need to get a point across. We just wanna make sure everything is done, you know, with our consent. You know, I know we've spoken with the fire department, you know, they have a whole different set of rules if these companies perform tests without taking off their alarm boxes, and they have fines and stuff. And the first company that started all this problem a year ago actually didn't even call them. So they were from North Shore,
They
they
did
do
it without
things-
calling the fire department?
Yep,
I just don't understand why that each town is okay with that.
right.
I mean, I get that all the time in
Mhm.
Mansfield too. I get that. Well, you know, every town's different. Well, they can't be. You know, they're not gonna let you just jump on a hydrant arbitrarily.
Right.
They-
Right, it doesn't make sense. The excuses that we
Push
hear
the
don't make
envelope
sense.
as far as you can before you get caught, that's what they do.
I think you're exactly right, yeah. You know, they do what they can, you know, obviously it's time is money. You know,
Yeah.
the more people they have to call, the more coordination they have to do, you know, it affects, you know, their bottom line.
Well, our staff will be best used for what it's intended for, as opposed to chasing.
Instead of chasing.
This stuff, yeah.
Exactly. So, I do have contact information. I spoke to one gentleman. The property management company for that location is actually out of New Hampshire. I did speak with the gentleman in charge of this area and the company that performed the test that day. We were on a 3-way conference call that we were able to get everybody together. What ended up happening and how this event happened, according to what was explained to me, they actually responded to the location because they had a failed backflow device.
Okay.
So our independent tester, you know, went out, tested it, the device failed, they were notified. to remain in compliance, they received the 14-day notice
Yep.
to repair and replace from us. They contacted their normal fire suppression repair company, a local company here in Norton, was given what they believe was a ridiculous cost estimate to repair these, so they reached elsewhere. They found this other company from North Shore for a third of the price. Were able to come down. They had the devices tore apart and rebuilt within the same day. When they took them apart, they noticed there was some particles in there. So the first course of action for them was to
Blow
flush
it
the
out.
lines.
Right.
Whether that's normal, North Shore, somewhere else, it obviously doesn't work for us. So definitely explained, the situation. They understood. The company's been in business for a very long time. They now know, obviously, what our rules and regulations are. And I explained to them that it will be brought up to the board. It's a board decision. If they feel it was, gross negligence and we want to fine them, or if this is their one get out of jail free card, because it wasn't a major system impact, it was able to be handled, there was no overtime involved, would this be a learning experience? And go from there.
They've never done a job in Norton before?
They have never worked in Norton before.
Again, it's not the responsibility of them either, it's the responsibility of of the property owner, whoever the
Exactly.
property owner may be.
Yeah.
So if they choose not to, just to disregard it and hire whoever they want, which is fine, the repercussions,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm glad it didn't cost us any extra money for overtime, but still, it's our time.
It's our
You know,
time, it's our
yeah.
water, it was wasted.
And the nuisance to the customers,
Yeah.
which is what the most annoying thing overall
Right.
is, yeah.
There's no more worse feeling than when you get a phone call here and somebody's complaining that they have, a disturbance in their water, and we have no cause for why that's happening.
Yeah.
We feel horrible on the phone, obviously the secretaries feel horrible, we get the information from them, we call them back if we find out what's going on. In this case, when we called people back, they were understanding, still upset, we brought some iron out to the location because people had done their laundry, and that's the whole reason for the public notification. It doesn't reach everybody, but it reaches the majority of people. And had we have known, John would have been, able to put this on the notice that he has online. Might have reached a few more people, might have mitigated. Even if there was a disturbance, it was planned.
Yeah.
So something for you guys to think about. Don't need to make a decision. If we want to, again, enforce the rules and regulations, which are there for a reason. That's completely up to you guys. Let's see, where else we going here? We'll jump over to Mansfield. So we've been working with the town of Mansfield's contractor, who was hired to extend the water mains on two of the side roads off of Reservoir Street in the Grove area here in town, Azalea and Barberry. Each water main passed pressure test, and just recently I actually received the copies of the sanitary sampling, which was done. Both had passed. They are both now active to our distribution system. Fire department was notified of the new hydrant that was installed as part of this water main extension project, which is on the end of Azalea, or the new end of Azalea. The hydrant that was on Barberry Road was actually just moved a few hundred feet to the new end of Barberry. So again, an additional hydrant to the system. We're going to gain a few more customers when those lots sell in Mansfield. No changes down there. I believe the one new hydrant has a hydrant flag on it. If not, we'll obviously just take care of that in-house, so we know where it is. Let's see. All right, and flow testing, like I had mentioned, we actually have a test scheduled for this Friday. There's actually two tests. Norton School Department.
They can't do that any other day other than a Friday?
They have a half a day on Friday, so
So if you get dirty water, you'll be chasing it all weekend
we'll
long.
be chasing it for the weekend. So their fire suppression company is going to come out. There's going to be a fire pump test, which is at the middle school. This is a pretty large pump that's there. We should be able to isolate that to the school based on the hydrants and what we've done there in the past. Notices will be sent out. There is a notice that's going to be in the Sun Chronicle paper based on our requirements to get it to as many people as possible, because these type of flows can be impactful, and it may not just be isolated to that location. If you have something over on Crane Street or Pine Street and the water turns the other way because you've changed the speed of the water in the system, it's possible. Again, knock on wood, we've had, very good water quality throughout the area. We test almost every day for our residuals, and water quality. There are still a few areas in town that, are problematic, as with any town, unfortunately. These tests are something that are necessary. It's not required by us. We're required to be there and witness the test, but this is actually a fire department and insurance regulation requirement. So I know a lot of people have asked before, well, why do they have to do it so often? It's based on the usage of the building, and it's based on the requirements set in place by fire and insurance. It's not something that we have control over. Once that test is done, they're actually going to move to the Norton High School and do a sprinkler flow test over there. A much smaller test, should not be very impactful. That school is set far off the road, has its own designated service. So again, we can work on hydrants in the area if necessary. Our staff will be on hand to monitor pressures and quality during these events. And again, we'll do everything we possibly can to limit the disturbance, but by being there, it's half the battle to knock down the response time. Let's see. I'm going to jump across to sewer. I know we've spoken a little bit, Steve Peterson and myself, about the adjustment to the sewer rates or the sewer connection fees. And in past discussions, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong here, conversation was typically after the last project has been completed, the sewer connection fee cost, if it's not the same already for the town from the previous project, it would be changed to match that rate, in the easiest possible terms to simplify things. Speaking with our office administrator, the last time the fees were changed was actually back in 2015. In order to do that, it is required to be a public hearing. It would require a post in a local newspaper. The public hearing was held during a board meeting. The chair would obviously start the board meeting, then go to at the specific time to open the public hearing, allow discussions to go on back and forth about why the rates are changing. Obviously, public input is key. That's the whole reason for it.
We can do that here?
And it can be done here. Obviously the meeting would be closed. There'd have to be very detailed minutes taken. There's sign-in sheets that are required for anybody who attends. With COVID, I believe we would have to, if somebody does want to call in, we would obviously have to gather their information, so we can obviously have that on record, where they wouldn't be able to be here and actually sign in. So it's a step in the right direction. We do have to look at this. It's been quite some time since anything has been changed, whether it be the connection fee or the actual sewer rate itself. Two separate things.
And there's a big difference between a rate.
Mm-hmm.
So your sewer user rates definitely need
Tie-in.
the hearing and the rate study. The fees are a little bit different. We need to talk more about that.
Exactly. We need clarification. That's why I started this with Steve.
So it's a different process to raise the rate fees versus the
Yes.
connection fees.
Yep. Right. The connection fee would be what the Plain Street residents are paying now, and that's actually based on a previous project. It doesn't match the current fee, what you see on West Main Street. There's a difference of maybe $4,500 or so, just for a ballpark number. So that's typically what you see brought up to match the most current or most recent project, I think is the way it's worded.
Now, we had already said going forward, it's all gonna be betterments for everything, right?
On projects moving forward, that is gonna be the goal.
For
Yeah.
sewer extensions,
Yep.
the intent is that there will be betterments. All the
What
projects.
does that do for connection fees then? Does it even need to?
Yeah, so the
Yep.
connection fees still exist. There's still gonna be, the biggest thing with the connection fees are the developers. When the developers come in, develop a parcel that's either already fronting on a sewer, they have to pay a connection fee,
Yeah.
or a lot of times they have to extend sewer a certain distance.
And that's all in addition to whatever the betterment was?
So,
No, that's just,
So
it's separate.
it
gets
it's very
confusing.
confusing, and that's
Yes.
why,
So, like-
and it was made more
like-
confusing last night too.
Like if the we have a situation right now on Bay Street, someone's developing an empty lot, sewer fronts their property, they have to pay a fee that Steve's talking about.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to the betterment, the project's being put in by their house.
okay.
And that's how they're being assessed it like that. So it's not like they're building on a lot that already has sewer, has sewer available to it.
If you pay a betterment, you don't have to pay a connection. It's one or the other. But there is, within the betterment regs, when you pay a betterment, say there's a single-family home on a 3-acre lot, pays his betterment as a single-family home like they are at the time,
Yep.
and then 5 years later, he sells it, developer comes in with a proposal to put up, 20 units on the property. You have the ability to reassess based on the change in use. And that's dealt through the regs, but it's considered a privilege fee then. But then properties that were never assessed a betterment because they didn't meet the criteria for being assessed a betterment are charged a connection fee.
And if everything goes as planned for us in the future. the people-
Predominantly betterments. The residents are gonna be betterments. And the Plain Street people, and I would've, gotten up and spoken at length about it to address some of the concerns, and we did explain all those things to them on the phone in those Zoom meetings or whatever, and I understand the connections weren't great and people had trouble with it. But when we did the town center sewer project, that was right after we had completed the comprehensive wastewater management plan. We had established areas in town that needed sewer, and so we were putting a plan in place to start, and the area adjacent, the predominant areas of the needs areas, everything on Route 123 from Wheaton College out to Worcester Road, north and south Worcester Road. And then the remaining areas south of the reservoir are the needs areas. And it was identified that the Wheaton area was a prime location for the main pump station that everything was gonna collect at and pump to the treatment plant. And coincidentally and simultaneously, Wheaton needed to replace their treatment plant. It wasn't meeting code, and instead of replacing it, they approached the commission, and for at least a year, there was a negotiation process. And we worked out a very fair agreement for both sides. I think Wheaton, was thrilled to not be in the wastewater business, but, a treatment plant would have cost them in the $3 to $4 million range. They paid $4.7 million to the commission, to the town, through the commission.
To be free of it.
To be free of it, and that's money was put towards, and they negotiated a location on campus for our pump station and all the force main and whatever. So when that project was voted, it was paid completely by Wheaton. And then after we voted the project and were finalizing the design, the schools approached us and the select board about the fact that the North School was in failure.
Right.
Our force main was going down Pine Street for the interceptor, that was the plan. We looked at it and we said, it's about $500,000 more to change the route and go Plain Street, Pine to Plain.
Yep.
School's at the top of the hill here, we could run a gravity sewer up, pick up the school, tie the force main into that. Everybody was thrilled, we got the vote at town meeting. We fronted those Plain Street residents along the way. The project had never been voted to issue betterments because we were never gonna front any properties. We didn't need to collect betterments to pay for the project, because the costs were covered.
Right.
So that's why they fall under the connection fee.
It seems like going forward, they're gonna be the last group
It
that's
should be.
impacted that way, probably.
Most likely, a unique situation came up, obviously the school had no choice, but to beg and plead with the commission at the time to have that installed there. And it'd be foolish for them not to make the change and have it go that way and better, another town facility. A unique situation. Those residents obviously don't have the option for the betterment to defer over 20 years with a low interest loan.
Right.
But they have similar options, which I believe were all explained to them at previous meetings, a home equity loan, obviously take it out, a line of credit against your home, you can still write that off, which is similar you know, to other monies, you know, obviously a personal loan if you have, you know,
And they're still qualified for the Board of Health loan for their portion of it.
for the construction
That's
connection.
Connecting,
on
Yes.
their-
the actual connection.
Exactly,
Not the
yeah,
connection fee, but.
right,
For the
yeah,
physical connection. Yeah,
right,
there's so many facets to it.
right.
You
yeah.
know, and that was confusing last night, you know, he kept calling it a low-interest loan, and what it is, under the betterment laws, you collect from everybody whether they tie in or not. Whether you have a requirement to tie in, no requirement to tie in, 2 years, 5 years, whatever,
Right.
day one, you send out the bills,
And it either
you got
gets
30
paid
days
in
to
whole,
pay it. Yeah,
or
you either
it
pay
goes
it
on the
within 30
tax.
days, or they put a lien on your house, and they just throw it on your taxes at 2.5% interest, and it stays there for 20 years, or if you choose to
So
commit and
the
pay
only
it off.
decision that people on West Main Street have is when they want to actually connect.
right?
So yeah, they're
Zero
paying,
to now
so
7
their
years later.
connection fee is a betterment, they either paid it up front, and it was more than right now what the fee is for the.
But when they go to
for the
connect, they're
loans.
only paying for their construction costs and not.
I feel like that's kind of been lost, is that with a betterment, you're paying from day one way or the other.
And you can argue both sides of it, I
So-
get that it's actually convenient, you don't have to do anything,
Right.
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
but
right.
a lot of people don't
you're
like a
already
lien
given
on their
a loan,
house.
whether you
You get,
qualify for
start
a
getting
loan or not.
phone calls, they put a lien on what do you mean you put a lien on my house? You know,
Yeah.
that's just.
Yeah, it's just a legal process for.
So
that.
whereas the connection fee, the town, because it wasn't voted that way at town meeting, you can't lien them.
Right.
So you can't protect the investment. That's the protection of, that's why the town pays it, and then, you know, the money up front gets fronted by the town, and then they collect it over time through the taxes to the resident. But for the connection fees, those properties can't be liened. They just don't have the legal mechanism to lien the properties. So I don't know what launched me into that, but those were some of the things
Yeah.
I thought about getting up to the mic and saying, but I really didn't.
I should
There
have
was
asked you to
too
come
many
up.
people.
Yeah, it was drawn
But
out.
it would've just drawn it out
Yeah.
even more.
And would it have
still,
made
people
a
still
difference?
wouldn't have understood,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
I don't even know what I'm talking about sometimes. It's so confusing, you know.
Well, I just,
So many
I
different- I wouldn't worry about it.
I
It's
think
just- it was
we
just
all,
frustrating.
as a board, because we kind of got thrown under the bus a little bit last night, and I don't know some of the references that he was talking about, but I think we've come a long way, and we're a lot more compassionate and try to do our best here with the
Yep.
people that do come in and try to explain it the best we can. I mean, we just ask people, just ask questions if you got any questions. We have a number here, we have great staff here that
I
can.
mean, everything in his statement that he doesn't understand, and the wife getting up and saying she doesn't understand it. And I get that, because they're hard to understand,
Yep.
but we did try and explain those
Mhm.
things. They might not like the answer, you know, it doesn't change their situation.
Right.
Right,
That
right.
they're in,
Help
it
them.
doesn't help, so I understand all of that, but we did explain. We explained the Wheaton and why that went down the way it did, and why it's different than the West Main Street, and why the other people on Pine and Plain can't connect to the sewer.
Right.
And we, you know, $750,000 in revenue, it's just not real. He's saying if you made them all connect, you could collect from them just like the other residents, but
Yeah, just
they
not-
don't have a sewer in front of their property that they pay for.
Right, it's not-
He
it's not an
understood that, but,
option.
you know, when you just start saying to people, there's a sewer out there, it's a force main that no one can tie into. And we could have run a parallel pressure sewer that everybody could have installed a pump and tied into, and we talked about that at the time of construction. Pine and Plain Street were not needs areas, so they're not part of the whole, you bought capacity at the MFN plant, and those areas aren't part of that capacity that you bought. And furthermore, you know, go ahead and install a pressure sewer and run stubs to the property lines, and then send the same letters to all those people saying, not only you have to tie in, but you gotta buy a pump. You all
Yeah.
need, you know, we don't have a gravity sewer, you have to buy your own pump and tie in. Because we weren't gonna get gravity to all those people unless we put another pump station in,
Right.
which it just keeps spiraling and spiraling. The intent was not to sewer those properties, it was not to go that way. We were never gonna go down Pine and Plain. They can say, so that, in their minds, they got screwed, because
Mhm.
then they ended up being the 9 properties
Yeah.
that got sewer. I'm sure there are 100 people in town that would say, I wish I had a sewer.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
You
you
know,
brought it
for-
up last night, yep.
For every property that
Yep.
feels like they have not been bettered, you know, and you can start talking about, you know, the property value, but that's a rabbit hole too. You know, tell me the numbers. I don't know the numbers, but I know when you go to sell your house, being on sewer has a lot of value to it,
Yep.
as opposed to having an on-site system. So the money that it's costing them now will come back to them. You know, it's just, it's a hard pill to swallow right now. And I just really didn't want to say all of that.
Yeah, it was too involved and not the place and time. You know, all of that had been explained,
Yeah.
you know, in multiple different ways, multiple different locations, and, you know, I don't know if one more, you know, big discussion would have been the solve all, and the light bulb would have went on. It's just, you know, we'll deal with what happened, and we'll make adjustments as necessary
I mean, it's
down the
2
road.
years.
It's better than 10 years.
Mhm.
It's really not gonna move the needle. I mean, those residents aren't moving the needle at all.
They have no
In terms
impact.
of the money,
Yeah.
the nine
Yeah.
residents. It's the other, it's all the West Main Street people, if they choose to take time. The big water users are gonna tie in. All those commercial properties are gonna tie in because they need
They
it.
need
In
it.
order to maintain their businesses, they need to tie in. I'm sure a lot of them are already tying in. So anyway, I don't know, we were talking about, you had started with, we gotta figure out how we're going to modify the regs. So I
Right,
need to,
right.
in terms of the connection fee, I was going over this with Fran from our office a little bit, who obviously was involved with Diane and Luke. And there were a lot of moving parts on this discussion. But it clearly states in here that the connection fee is tied to the most recent betterment. But there was a study done a while back by the rate study people, Abraham's.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
And we'll need to look at it. So they came up with the $35 a gallon that currently justifies the initial 11,550. So when people talk about a rate study was done, there was something done to establish the initial connection fee. But based on the regs, I think going forward, it's supposed to be tied to the betterment.
Right.
So at some point, you modify your regs and change the Winnicott betterment to the West Main Street betterment, and the connection fee goes up commensurate with that. So the new connection fee would be 16,000.
Would be equal to the
But we do need
current.
to look at that a little bit
Yeah,
more.
it was something we can dig into, we get legal involved with it if necessary. Same thing, town manager and
Yep.
town accountant.
What is involved in the rate study?
It's,
Hire a company to
it's,
do that, or-
yes, it's involved, it's
It's a
very
headache.
costly.
Mhm.
I don't remember how long it
And that's
took,
the
it took
cash
some
flow.
time.
It did take a while.
Is that something that
You
we
did
do
it
though,
for
or we
the-
hire a company? to do
We,
that?
No, we hire
we
a
hire,
company.
we hire this Abraham,
Yeah,
company there, that they come in, and he's very good, does a lot of
Better
towns
go.
in the area.
Yeah, very thorough, I mean, they go over everything for, you know, quite a period of years.
Yep.
They give projections based on, you know, current environmental impacts, what you may or may not see. You have to provide them with what you plan to do for infrastructure improvements and a cost. And all of that, especially now with the way the economy is a hard target to hit. So again, you're dealing with estimates, you know.
So they're not just taking into account past stuff, they're looking in the future and
Yes.
that's all
Correct,
weighing
yep,
in.
yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, oh, it's involved, it's lengthy. Honestly, the impact that we saw when we have the bond payment that's due for the water treatment facility on top of our existing bonds that we had was right on the money. You know,
Yeah.
from what they anticipated it would be, you know, based on the information that we give them. It's only as good as what we can provide them.
Right.
And, you know, when this was done, maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was.
Yep.
When it was
When
finished.
they're coming in, yep.
You know, he was right on the money.
We had an open meeting, they come to the open meetings, they come here, and they'll explain it all out to us in PowerPoint presentation, and, you know, it's, like Frank said, it's very detailed, and it's.
How long of a process is it? Is it like a month or is it?
No, my God, that takes a little longer than that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact time frame.
4
but,
months maybe, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it was quite a few months.
Yeah.
Spent many nights here,
Yeah.
going over the books and looking at things. And that's how we determined the water rate increase that we just had.
Right.
If we didn't act and do something, you know, by the time we hit, you know, 2021, we were gonna see that we didn't have enough retained earnings to keep our minimum amount that we wanna see in there. You know, you can't just keep digging from that. You know, you have to make an adjustment, or DOR won't certify, you know, your monies that you have. And obviously, then you run increased risk that you're not gonna be able to go bonded for your future projects. So they come up with a few different options that the previous board was able to decide on. You know, either have a one huge jump right up front, or have a tiered structured increase and spread it out over a certain period of time, which most people would accept, you know, is the best possible option, and that's actually what the board had done. You know, they did a small increase to the base amount, you know, the minimum charge that we see for water, and then I believe it was the following year, they did an incremental increase by percent, and so on and so on, until you met that number that you want to achieve. And then obviously, if you see, for some reason, an excess in your retained earnings, you know, as a responsible business owner, you're supposed to use that money, a portion of that money, you know, to better your system.
Yep.
You know, you can obviously use it to pay down the loan, but they look at it as you should use it for an investment
Infrastructure.
on your infrastructure. It's involved. I don't know, I mean, if that was all done back in 2015 or prior, or, you know, things may have changed, what needs to be done. Steve you might remember, when did the sewer become enterprise?
I don't.
I know it's still in its infancy stages, honestly, it's fairly,
Was it at that time? Was it
I don't think I wanna know
2015?
what that is.
I think it may have been right around that timeframe.
What is it?
When they had to determine, you know, what the water and sewer rate was at the time.
Yeah. And I don't think you've done a sewer rate study,
That's my concern, I don't
In
think
a
it's been
while.
done in quite some time,
again, about the user rates,
Right.
not the connection.
not the connection.
The last
Yep.
study you did on sewer, so the rate study for sewer was about the connection fee and about what is really the cost per gallon in your system based on the investment you've made in the whole system. So that you had something to back up when it was about the developers coming in and you saying, all right, you're equivalent to, you know, 100 units, because you're putting in 100 two-bedroom units, so it's 100 times 11,550. You already had the fee. The rate study backed into establishing that it was a reasonable fee.
Yeah, you have to, again, like Steve said, you have to prove that the rates that you're charging are fair.
Yep.
You know, you're not making an exorbitant amount of profit, but obviously you don't want a deficit either. You know, you really wanna kinda fine tune it and stay right along, you know, the border, so you're up and down a couple years here and there. And that just shows, you know, good operation of a business. I mean, that's exactly what these are, as enterprise accounts, they're small businesses.
Where in the process does the public hearing come in? Is that after the rate study's all been done? Or
Yes,
Yeah.
when you're ready to vote the new rates
we're
in,
ready
you
to vote the
present
rates,
it.
then we present
You
it?
have a discussion at a meeting here, or hearing,
Makes sense.
public hearing.
And I'm not sure if we're even at the point right now where we actually need a rate study to increase the actual sewer rate, but the connection fee is something that I think should be looked at first, if it does need to be matched to the current betterment, you know, and they're two separate things. But I was actually very surprised after John actually did some quick numbers on the sewer, the actual fee per gallon is ridiculously low.
It's just under a cent
It's
per
under 1
gallon.
cent per gallon for wastewater. And the only reason I would say we might wanna hold off a little while on looking at an increase on that is the wonderful word of PFAS. It's in water, it's also in wastewater. You know, we've seen significant increases in our cost to the MFN for our portion of the wastewater. When they are starting to be required to remove PFAS from the solids that they have in wastewater and discharge, I can only imagine it's gonna be passed off on the people who are discharging to that facility. It's only fair.
Is it the same parts per trillion?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it in
I
wastewater.
didn't know that in wastewater. I didn't know that
But
at
it
all.
will need to be removed.
Wow.
It can't be.
I don't
can't
think it's
be.
the same
Can't
parts per
imagine.
No
trillion,
way.
but, you know, it's a forever chemical. So the fact that they have a groundwater discharge system,
Right.
they have to remove it before they do that, or you're putting it right back in the aquifer where you just removed it from.
Right, I get that.
So monies, you know, obviously could be significantly changed
Yep.
over the next, you know, 5, 6 years, 10 years, for PFAS and PFOA removal from solid waste. It's something that, you know, really hasn't been talked about, but I've been in on a couple conferences and read a few articles about it, and depending on the state that you're in, obviously with us, we have different requirements. You know, we're much
We sure do.
more stringent than the federal guidelines, so it's very possible we could see some really harsh regulations
Yeah.
for solid PFAS or PFOA removal.
Right.
Yeah, the recharge water, for lack of a better word, may need to be
Right,
pretty.
might need to be filtered before they put it in the ground, and that's gonna come to a cost. So it's, you know,
Wow.
not that I'm trying to, you know, hold off and expect the worst, but we have to think about that,
That never crossed my mind. That never crossed my mind.
unfortunately.
Hmm.
You know, and as time goes on, they may find more of these forever chemicals that are impactful. You know, so, you know, if you're gonna spend the time and the
Sure they
effort
will.
to do this, you're right, I mean, you know the industry that we're talking about.
They absolutely will.
You know, to do a rate study, it's expensive, it's involved, you wanna make sure you're doing everything that's right, and, you know, provide all the numbers as accurate as you possibly can. The last thing we wanna do is have this, you know, this 8 ball hanging on the side here that, you know, could swing the number drastically.
Yeah.
Just something to,
Yep.
just keep in the back of your minds.
Yep.
I mean, you know, what happened last night, as Steve has mentioned before, is not hugely detrimental to the sewer department. You know, it's a change in the regulations that we'll adapt to and we'll deal with, but there's far more important things down the road that will affect water and sewer rates, unfortunately.
And that'll play a small part in it.
Yeah. Yeah, everything adds up. But that's all I actually have. I knew that was gonna be a little while, so I left that right till the end.
Do you want office administrator?
It hasn't been,
It's posted at town hall.
oh, is it awarded?
At town hall.
There you go, make the announcement.
We, along with the town manager, have found a person to fill the upcoming office administrator position. Her name's Brooke. She works at town hall right now, so she has some background with the system we run and has other, I believe,
Yeah, she has a banking
banking
background.
experience as well.
Okay.
So. I believe that's probably gonna be confirmed at town, the next selectmen's meeting, but.
So they've officially
It was
appointed her, and then she
She'll
goes
be
through the
appointed
process.
on Thursday night at the select board meeting.
Okay.
So I sent the letter of recommendation off to the town manager forwards my recommendation along with his, with the request to appoint to the select board.
Okay.
They do have 14 days to deliberate and choose. Typically, it's always a decision that's been made at that particular meeting. And they roll the 14-day decision into the 60-day probationary period.
Okay.
So if
Good.
everything
Good.
goes the way we want, we could see,
So we're gonna have ample time to at least.
Oh, I would not say
we
ample
would-
time.
I would have loved to have another couple months, of course.
yes,
But,
I think you were both involved with an email conversation that I got into with a few
Yeah.
different people regarding the situation
Mhm.
and how much of a delay and the impacts it could have avoided. But we'll get to. And
Okay, good.
we have, I have a special request into the town manager to allow our current office administrator to come back on an as-needed basis, especially during billing cycles and stuff, which has been done for other employees who have moved on to other towns to help and ease the transition. So I'm waiting to see that letter to finalize that.
That's it.
I don't know if Tara's still out there. I think she's awful quiet. Tara, you
she's
still
here.
there? Did we lose?
Well, I did knock off for a little while there doing the sewer stuff, but I'm back on.
We do need to.
Okay.
We do, yeah.
I'd
You
love
don't
to
know
be
what you're
involved.
missing, Tara. You're
I'd
on
love
the
to be
wrong
involved.
Sure,
industry.
most definitely.
No, so there actually weren't a lot of updates on the water side of things from 2 weeks ago. One thing that we did accomplish, which I mentioned that was going to happen last week, the well 6 pumping test approval application was submitted to DEP. So that's in their hands now. We've got that 72-day turnaround for that, and we're hoping it'll be a lot less just based on the fact that well 5 and well 6 are pretty much identical, so it hopefully will be a relatively easy review process for them.
Okay.
And then we do have the CAD plans now from our survey for White Street, so we're going to start moving ahead and updating with the existing utility information to start that design. So that's kind of it on the water side, unless there's any questions.
Tara, for the well 6 approval, is there like precedent for like our kind of hopefulness of them approving a similar source faster, or?
It kind of, it's really, the DP really does try to do the process of whoever is, whichever application comes in first kind of gets to the top of the list, and then they try to work through it. The good news is that in that department, they typically have resources specifically dedicated to that. So, the hope is that it'll be relatively quickly. Some of the other smaller systems and other applications in other departments and other regions can be a little bit different process. So, we got a good working relationship with DEP, and they know that, we're itching to get this project moving forward. So we're hoping that, they process it in a little bit faster than the 72 days, which, I mean, I have to tell you guys, DEP is short-staffed across the board. It's everybody's, still feeling the effects of COVID and working from home. So they're not back to the office, and they're still dealing with, limited resources. So I think they've been doing a great job with what they've got. So, we try not to stress them out too much, but we will be certainly checking in with them in a couple weeks just to kind of see where we're at.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Thanks, Tara.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Good luck with the Stewart conversation next. I'm just kidding.
Excellent.
Good night, Tara.
Have a good night.
Thanks,
You're up
Tara.
in 2 weeks.
Bye. All right. Now I'll be down there in 2 weeks.
Okay. Mr. Peterson.
So a couple of things just on Cobb Street. We, I think I mentioned last time that we have the shop drawing submittals. We're finalizing our review of the generator. The one thing I'm trying to get our electrical guy to confirm, they submitted, so we spec'd a 175 kW generator. They're submitting on a bigger generator, which probably isn't an issue, but I'm just trying to make sure that that all the wiring and stuff at the station is sufficient for that. And I would ask, do you, Frank, want you or Howard to take a look at it? It's a Kohler. I mean, as long, we're gonna make sure it meets the spec and is the one that we.
I mean, I don't think there's any need for either of us to delay the process. I mean,
So we'll get that wrapped up
Yeah.
and back to them and get so they can get the order in, and get in the queue. I talked, so Frank and I we actually talked with Tara too about some potential projects for the ARPA monies. I think the way I left it with you is I owe you a contract for installing generators at, putting contracts together for Holly Road and Knollwood.
correct.
2 stations that,
Yep.
you guys need to add standby power.
Yes.
So those are the.
We
two.
don't currently have at either, or we have
So Holly
dated.
Road does not.
Holly Road does not have any type of permanent backup power. We
Okay.
actually have a tow-behind generator
Okay.
with the umbilical cord that we towed on
Yep,
there
yep.
anytime.
Okay.
And it's a very small station.
It is a very
In
small
terms of
station.
flow, it's a
Yep.
small
Yeah,
neighborhood.
very
Um,
slow.
Where's Holly Road?
That is actually on Reservoir Street.
Okay.
And Knollwood has an antiquated system with a small propane-powered engine that when the power goes out, it
Didn't-
actually runs a motor and a belt to
Oh, like a
run,
right angle drive type thing?
similar, to
Yeah.
run one of the pumps. The station, back in the 80s when it was designed, or
Yeah.
early 90s, it was very low flow. It was basically to serve that neighborhood that was there. With, the changes that have happened over the past 20 years, there's multiple places that have connected to that. We need to upgrade.
What were the
backup
upgrades that
power.
were done with,
274.
yeah,
Yeah, they installed new pumps in place of the existing pumps.
okay, all right, so
that
there was
was
nothing
there.
to the generator then?
No, there
Okay,
was no
okay.
generator or anything at the time. So
I knew they had done something, I just couldn't remember. yeah.
So, it's well overdue to
Okay,
have
yep.
some type of newer technology there.
Is that gonna be similar size as the one, or is that gonna be a little smaller?
This
The
one
one
should
on
be
the Great
larger.
Woods
This
will be
one's
larger?
probably gonna be 100 kW.
Okay.
So this is something you may remember, I actually started the bid process for it in-house 6-8 months ago, maybe, somewhere around there.
Mhm.
The delay for people to come out and give us quotes was so long that by the time I had my third quote, the first quote was out of date
Oh my gosh.
by the 90
You're
days.
kidding me.
So we had some very good numbers. One of the numbers was actually, I believe, 47,000 and change.
Mhm.
So not a big deal. I called them up. I said, look, I said, I have you. Can I have an updated quote for this exact unit? They pulled it up. They said, I just need a new date on it, make sure it's going to be valid. When the new quote was sent back out, it was actually more than 50,000 because things had changed. You know, short window of time, but there was still an increase on price. By going over the 50,000, it requires a sealed bid process. So now all those 3 quotes that I had basically are no good, just because of the changes in the dollar amount. So to make sure we have the right generator there for the future, we want to bring Steve and his guys in, you know, knowing that there's anticipated growth in the area. There's plenty of vacant land along the sides there. We could obviously put more into that station if there were upgrades done to the wet well, but with not having the proper equipment there for safety purposes, that's my first focus. You know, it runs the way it is now, knock on wood, it's been great, but we're
But
gonna
it's
focus on the emergency backup.
Every
power.
5 minutes, it's probably, other than Cobb Street, our most important
It is a busy station, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a
Okay.
very busy station. You know, Howard in the sewer department has kept up on the maintenance of everything there. Everything works flawlessly. But again, it's got some age to it. It's not the proper setup for the way things are worked now.
Mhm.
Time to put a nice standby generator there.
Good. Okay.
We have natural gas available there, not propane.
Beautiful.
So it's gonna have a permanent fuel source, which is better than most of our other
Yep.
locations.
Yep.
So.
Great.
So I think that's,
I think that was really it, and we were gonna look at the funding for that to come from the ARPA money that has been allocated to
Okay.
our department. So you won't see articles on town meeting asking for money for that. You know, other phases down the road, you know, if we're gonna do an upgrade at that station, a wet well, whatever, you know, that most likely would go, you know, to outside funding, but, we have the federal money available.
Okay.
And, we have to present them with these different options.
Okay.
Same thing on the water side of it. Tara and I are working for different areas in town to do upgrades. And basically, they pick and choose which ones fit certain criteria, so we want to make sure it's worded the right way and make sure we're aiming towards, you know, the specific criteria that is in the articles.
Okay.
I think you had mentioned, Steve, that obviously backup power and emergency services is definitely one of those.
yes.
Okay. So we feel pretty good that, you know, it's a very small number of what you're getting, you know, and we'll go that route.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Appreciate it. What's the status of the 123 project over here, West Main Street? Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
no.
DOT.
The Mass
Yeah.
DOT.
Yeah.
Before I went on vacation, we actually had a meeting in the field, discussed a few of the items that, for some reason, were left off of the initial estimate. There's a cross-tie connection at 495, which
Okay.
connects the 12-inch main and the old 6-inch main. Looking at the plans, which was something we'd never seen until this project come around, Mass DOT isn't required to submit as-built plans to abutters, other utilities, anything like that, when they come in and do something, is what we've been told in the past. So 495 got cut through town when they had to remodify the existing mains that were there.
Yeah.
We didn't get any plans on it. So when this project comes to fruition, we saw plans, we blew them up because they didn't make any sense. And it shows that there's a potential for 3 water mains where it goes from state property at 495 to town property.
Live?
Yep, all connected.
My God.
So we had the contractor do a couple test digs there. What we had thought I thought for 20 years, there was a valve on the fog line. We'd shut that down and it would kill what we believe was the cross tie going across to the opposite main. Well, In theory, it still worked that way, but this was actually a line valve. So there's a line valve on a 12-inch pipe. We assume, we didn't have them excavate any further, that line was capped at the end. So they ended up putting a T across to a main in the middle, which must have been there originally, moved over a little bit more and put another T across and attached to the opposite side of the road. That's the loop that they created. So by shutting one valve, it essentially shuts off those three little legs. How far they go, nobody knows.
Oh my God.
Something that we're not going to explore because of the impact it would have to that area. So we are going to cut and cap on the 12-inch side during one of the shutdowns, and obviously cut and cap on the opposite side of the road, so we don't have any settling, nothing going in there. And the one valve currently right now will isolate that area, so it's to our best knowledge that those three pipes are just little sections of pipe with caps on either end, and that was how they transitioned to get across the road.
Oh my God, no kidding.
So
Ugh.
you will see changes and most likely cost because of that. You know, we had the additional excavation that was done, the exploratory dig to find out what's there. You know, is additional work outside of the original contract because they didn't anticipate on capping that. But we're working with them. They've made some changes to the initial design. I think when you were out there, we're going to have gutter inlets to avoid a
They
few
talked
of
about those.
the water relocation
Yep,
areas.
yep.
You know, kind of the best of both worlds. You know, we save a little bit of money and definitely save on the amount of shutdowns and impact to
Yep.
the system. There is discussion that the board will have to have. The new town hall will not be able to connect to the existing town hall water line.
What's running in there now?
There's a 6-inch
6-inch.
line that runs across there. The domestic is tied off of that, which we no longer allow.
Right.
So there'll have to be a separate line that'll be run to the new town hall for fire service. And the best possible way to do this and follow our regulations is to have the new line coming in loop to the highway driveway. That would satisfy our loop requirement in the rules and regulations. It would provide a way to flush both of those systems out and provide a little bit more volume. Spurs coming off of that, which would be one going to the new town hall, would be the fire lateral. There'd be another spur coming off of it for the domestic. And then if they wanted to, they have the option of connecting the police station off of that loop and going from there. But in the best possible outcome is going to be additional hydrants. So right now, there's one hydrant out back at the highway garage, you know, all the way to the right of that large building. And there are no hydrants in between the buildings, you know, the backside of town hall, the backside of the police station. So by having the loop with the existing main, you have the option to drop a few new hydrants in there.
Good. Good.
There's a cost associated with installing that size.
Yeah, but
You know,
it's
it's a town property.
safe.
I mean, it's the best for everybody.
Yep.
You know, so that is something that will need to be looked at in the future.
Okay.
You know, the fire department has a big say in where they want the hydrants,
Sure.
especially with
Yep.
the close proximity that these new buildings will have as a
Yep.
municipal complex.
Yep.
There is still some concern about the sewer discharge. So many years ago, I believe the gentleman's name was Larry that ran North Cottage program. Very nice guy. Steve would probably remember. There was an agreement, an alleged agreement with the town, probably a handshake deal, as best that I can remember, that because the septic at the DPW garage and town hall are connected and it was failing, he would allow them to connect the line to his private North Cottage sewer line. Come to present, the new municipal complex is going to design the library, fire station, police station, new town hall, and highway garage to connect
Will that support it?
to one type of wet well. I don't think it can support the additional flow on top of the flow that they already see from North Cottage, especially if you're going to have two pumps going in a different location.
Yeah.
You know, if this was upstream and it dumped into the wet well, and then the wet well pumps discharged it as necessary, it's a different scenario. But they want to run a lateral from the garage driveway, the highway garage driveway, and basically T or Y into the existing force main that's there. I can see many problems with that. You know, again, I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to claim to be an engineer. We looked at the water usage for the buildings that are existing now. Actually seem pretty low. The meters are aged, so the chances are they are under recording. There's no way of knowing what the new town hall is gonna have for water capacity, so we can't calculate that in. And, again, as the best I know, it was a handshake or a gentleman's agreement, so I know that the town is working with the current, I don't even know the word I'd look for, owner, operator of the North Cottage program,
Yeah.
to see if they can come up with some type of agreement. And there is no engineer on board yet for this whole project to come up with, to certify that, oh yeah, we can take,
Oh.
100,000 gallons a day and add it to the 200,000, just for ballpark numbers, and it'll fit in that 4-inch pipe.
Glad I'm not an engineer.
So, I mean,
So, yeah,
you know,
it's challenging, man, holding the two together. It's different than, like we talk about on Pine and Plain, that you don't want people tying into that with their, little 1 horsepower
Mhm.
residential grinder pumps.
Yeah.
If the town can mimic the station that's there in terms of horsepower, it can be made to work. I think, the scenario would be once one is running, if the other one tries to turn on, it probably will hit a shut-off head,
Mhm.
and we'll need to wait.
Right. And
And
it's
try
gonna, it's
again,
gonna
and-
wait in traffic, and that becomes a problem.
It can,
Over
yeah.
time, you're
Yeah.
gonna, if you have the same impact times, like everybody gets up at a certain time in the morning, makes breakfast, showers, goes to the bath, you see the impacts are very similar. We can see the trends
Yeah.
in the sewer. If we have that problem, with the same things there at this, with one wet well and the other wet well, we're gonna have a problem. And 2 pumps running, or 2 stations running at the same time, it's gonna jack the pressure up.
Yeah.
Can that private line support
Right, that's
that
the
type of
question.
abuse, and for how long? We don't want any part of taking that private line over. We weren't allowed to be there when it was installed. Believe it or not, there was actually a highway guy that was on site when that was installed. We've been provided what were supposed to be good proposed as-bills, and we found that they are inferior. They were given to a private locating company for this DOT project, and the very next day, they drilled through the line. It is not even close to the plans. It's one thing if you were off a little bit on your measurements, they're 20 feet away.
Oh boy.
What did they go around, that there was so impactful that they couldn't go through it, and why did the plans indicate something different? So, I've made it clear to the town manager, we do not want that line, we do not want that pump station, which would typically be the next course of action if.
What's the best option? I mean, I know this is in the future, but it's gonna be in the near future. What's the best course of action going to get to sewer all those properties? I mean, we don't wanna do a spaghetti line. I mean, we're all opposed to that. That's just not gonna happen. But
There's
How much
talk,
further is it to pump over to 140 and 123 in the intersection?
Right.
Of course, then you gotta open up the pavement again,
Right.
I'm just,
yeah, no, exactly.
from that perspective, it doesn't work, but it's,
Right.
it's not that much further.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
it is, cause Town Hall's right across from North Cottage,
Right.
so that's pretty close.
Mhm.
So now you're talking about having, that would be shorter than trying to go all the way to the intersection.
Exactly. There's an option actually to stay.
you mean over near Pine Street?
Comes-
Yeah.
Sorry.
So to come, one option would be to take the Town Hall complex and just pump right down 123 all the way to the railroad bed.
Yeah, that's,
So coming the other way and tying in at Taunton Ave and Route 123, where we have a sewer manhole that then
Yep.
flows down to the pump station, would be significantly shorter than that.
okay.
But it's gonna come, either way, those are going right through areas that are now reconstructed.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there was talk, the town manager and I had talked about possibly coming out of the back of the highway garage where Miller Terrace abuts that property.
Yeah.
Miller Terrace is actually a street that actually has a spaghetti water service down it. Unfortunately, we've been there quite a few times repairing it. I'm not even sure if it's a town-accepted road. It's very narrow, very small.
Yep.
But if we come out of the back of the property, that would bring us out to Elm Street, one of the roads that we've held off on water or sewer upgrades, hoping that we'd see some interest in the Reed and Barton property,
Right.
and we could work that in.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't wanna put in something that's undersized, and basically shoot ourselves in the foot, and now we've limited that property, because we don't know what is potential that it could go there. So you
Right.
could come down to Elm Street, you could take a right, you could front the Reed and Barton property with sewer, and then go down to Reservoir and connect
So
there.
Orange and New Main, yeah.
Or you could come out of Miller Terrace, take a left on Elm Street, back across 123, and then you'd have to find a way to connect into the Wheaton pump station.
Yeah.
All feasible, but, involved. If we do the Elm Street route, which is a very good option, the water main has to be replaced at the same time because of the age of it. We don't wanna be excavating one trench,
Right.
paving a trench, and then coming back, a year later. So again, it's cost, if there was an engineer on board with this project, we'd have a lot more to talk about.
Is there a forced main going down 123 now? I mean, other than North Cottage?
No.
Okay.
It's all about timing, and unfortunately, this is not falling in, the way everybody had hoped.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, going way back, 5, 6 years ago, when this DOT project had started, not to say that I'm any better than who was here before, but things would have been done a little bit differently based on what I understand of the system.
Yeah.
We would have done away with the 16-inch main, installed a 12-inch main, brand new everything, and then they could have done whatever they wanted to with the
Right.
16-inch main.
Yep.
Use it for drainage because it's exactly where they want to go anyway.
Mhm.
Abandon it in place. As much as it's horrible to even say, when the moratorium is off of that road in 5, 7, or 10 years, that's going to be one project that we're actually looking at, is replacing that 16-inch main that is too large in town, for water quality, with a 12-inch main. Again, it's all about timing.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments, anything else?
So John must have something.
Nope.
No,
I
we're
don't
good?
believe it.
All right, with that being said, when I'm looking at my calendar, I was looking at November 9th and the 23rd for the next two, I would think. I will be away the 15th that week.
Take me with you.
You don't like Phoenix.
Never been.
So I think that would coincide with everything we got going on, the 9th and the 23rd, if that sounds good to you, Jim?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah, works for me.
all right. Well, with that being said, Jim?
We good?
Yeah,
All right, I move to adjourn our meeting.
I'm gonna second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.